got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction. Save your species before it's too late. It's time for you humans to stop making excuses and start making changes.
Hi, I'm Michelle Stirling for Friends of Science Society. Well, COP26 has come and gone, and although I had promised to do regular updates during COP26, I just found the flood of media hysteria too much, actually. Of course, the whole point of COP26 was to create the Paris rule book for the 2015 Paris Agreement, but that didn't seem to happen, and at the end of the event, Alok Sharma, the president of the COP26 conference, was almost in tears, claiming that it had been some kind of a failure. Now, oddly to me, I recently heard Boris Johnson's speech. I hadn't heard the whole thing before, but I heard him blame James Watts for inventing the steam engine, because that apparently caused the Industrial Revolution, and so it's all his fault. And now I understand why they wanted to hold the conference in Glasgow. But it seems very odd to me that they could bring up James Watt, that they could use a dinosaur in one of their promotional videos, but somehow no one seemed to know that just a few kilometers away from where the Watt steam engine was invented, the Stirling engine was invented. Yeah, Stirling engine. I know a bit about it. Michelle Stirling. And the interesting thing is that it's a zero emissions engine. So here's a little Stirling engine. And I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment here. This is a cup of hot water. And the Stirling engine works on the principle of heat exchange. So the heat goes up into the bottom part of this kind of cylinder. It heats it, but the top part is cool. And there's an exchanger in there that moves the heat and cold air around, which in turn drives this little piston. So it takes it a little while to warm up, and I may have to give it a nudge because it's an old model Stirling engine that has been in storage for a while. So in the meantime, the other interesting thing about this is that the city of Calgary just declared a climate emergency, and the new mayor, Mayor Jyoti Gondek, and council seem to be very concerned. But you know, they could just go up to the University of Calgary, because Dr. Graham Walker, also known as Joe Walker, he's passed away now, but he was the world leading authority on the Stirling engine and wrote several books on the topic, and he saw it as the engine of the 21st century. And many of his students will have retained his knowledge. So in 1816, the Stirling engine was invented at Kilmarnock, which is just down the road from Glasgow. And let's see if we can get this working. Well, as you can see, with a little bit of coaxing, what I did is I put very hot water in the cup underneath, and I put a couple of small ice cubes on top, because the way the Stirling engine works is that there's a differential between the hot and cold air that's recirculated within this kind of sealed piston, and that's what drives the upper pistons and the work of the machine, if you like. So it's a heat exchange mechanism. Now, this runs on any heat source. So Swedish submarines run on a version of the Stirling engine. There are different kinds of space applications that run on a Stirling engine. The cryo-coolers that are used in night vision, the miniature cryo-coolers, run on the Stirling engine. And there are different kinds of Stirling engines that have been invented. Some are called like the Stirling Phillips, the Stirling Rankine engine. So, you know, named after other inventors or people who added to the innovation. So the point of the whole thing is that this is a net zero engine. And that was a net zero conference. And no one even mentioned the Reverend Robert Stirling, who invented the Stirling engine in 1816. And my dad met Dr. Walker at a trade fair one time, because my dad used to sell equipment to schools, industrial arts equipment, to teach kids about things like the Stirling engine and about plastics extrusion. Anyway, and so Dr. Walker was quite interested in Dad's name and the fact that Dad was selling these miniature Stirling engines. And he asked him, you know, what about the family relation? And my dad said, well, his great aunt used to say that the Reverend Robert Stirling, oh, he was neither a good preacher nor a good engineer. But in fact, he was pretty good at both. And actually, as a reverend, he invented the Stirling engine because sadly a couple of his parishioners had been hurt by a Watts steam engine blowing up. So he wanted to create an engine that would be safer for his people, and that's a model of what he invented. So, you know, really when we think about these COP conferences, they spend a lot of money, they went to a lot of trouble, there are lots of street theater there, all kinds of Extinction Rebellion and Greta Thunberg and all kinds of people like that. And really the answer was right in front of their noses, just down the road from them. They didn't even think about it, they didn't even mention it. And so that gives you an idea that these COP conferences are not really about solving the problem. In fact, if anything, they're creating more problems for most of us in the world. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Stirling.